Welcome to another episode of Scavenger Workshop. In this episode, we're gonna look at the Scavenger MSE. I'm gonna do a complete assembly for you guys. So what you're gonna need to do is order this from one of the many water jet companies out there. They'll cut these plates out for you, ship them to you. There should be 7 plates total. And once you receive them and you buy all the parts listed on the parts list, you can go ahead and proceed with the assembly. So it's pretty straightforward. All you're gonna do is take these channels, and the way they work is the one with the slotted angle like this goes in the rear, right? They just slide right into these slots, like so. Very easy to do. Once you have all of them in there, slide, you're going to take these little nuts and slide these nuts into these little square T-slots that we have here, right? Oh, that was going to be a pain. Always one. Gives you little problems. There you go. All right. And once they're in there, flip it over. Let me see if I can get this one in there from the underside. All right, and then you're gonna take the socket, the little cap sockets that you ordered, the bigger one. There's 2 sizes. There's a tiny one, which is for the motors, and then there's a bigger one for the chassis assembly. You can use some Loctite if you want to make sure they don't rattle apart, but in my experience, I haven't had an issue with them, and I've been running these for a good while now. Just go ahead and put them all in there, tighten them down. I have these 2 different ones for the front. You do not need to do this. It's just my hardware store ran out of the regular ones, so I bought these other ones. And once you got them in there, torque them all down. They're all tight down. I know you guys noticed these little bolts I have on here. I didn't bother to take those off for the and start from the tutorial. Obviously you guys see how they go on there. That's for when we're done with the top shell, it's gonna sit on these bolts so that way it doesn't slide in any direction. So they're just little small bolts and nuts, right? So now that this is done, we want to go ahead and install the motors, right? I have 2 motors here. So we want to line up the motors, and let's grab one of these screws or 2 of these screws, motor screws. And kind of finger tighten these suckers on there. once you have these, at least two of the nuts on there, the small cap screws on there, you know, it'll hold that motor in place. And the same thing for the other motor as well. We designed this thing to go together fairly simple, so you don't have to have a whole lot of knowledge on how to put these things together. We wanted to make it in such a way that it was accessible for everyone to do, not just, you know, the best droid builders out there. We wanted to make it so that anyone can build these droids. And as you can see that the nuts for the chassis assembly are being pulled down by the bolts, and that's what holds this whole thing together. It's solid as a rock. So let me go ahead and put the other 4 screws in there. There's 3. Missing one. I should be missing a screw, but I'll find it. So we took a lot of time and research to try and get this thing to fit together so beautifully. I love the way this thing comes together. I mean, I actually went through quite a few iterations getting stuff water jet cut, so it wasn't exactly cheap developing this, but it was a fun little thing to do. All right, I can't seem to find one of them, so I'm just gonna go ahead and torque these down. Just imagine that this side has all 4. I think it rolled off somewhere. And then you definitely want to use some Loctite on these for the motors, you know, so that way they don't want to move anywhere. Okay. Got those motors in there. Now, let's put this aside for a second and let's take a look at the wheel assembly. All right, your front wheels are a set of Omni wheels, right? You have this little tiny spacer that's part of the, you know, the parts list that you need to buy, and that simply snaps in place, and then this other one will line up into these grooves and snap together, just like that, right? Next, you have your 2 1.5-inch spacers. You may have to sand them down, chuck them up in a drill bit and run some sandpaper over in order for them to slide into these bearings, because it is a little snug fit, but it can be done. Slide your bearing through there. We have one of these little washers, right? And then we have on the other side this little spacer here. And then in the middle, you're gonna have this tiny spacer. So that makes up the difference of the channel, right? And then you wanna grab your nut, pull it through, just like that. Slide that one on, slide that one on, and then lock it in place. And then that's your assembly for your Omni wheels. So let's go ahead and pop those on, right? So that's just gonna drop in like that. And a bolt on the other end. So go ahead and lock it down. See that? And we'll do the same thing for the other side. Just pop it in place. All right, and then lock it down. I always put the nut on the inside, just so you get the most clearance on the outside of the chassis as possible, right here, because there's really nothing that goes in this inner channel. All right, so we're going to set this aside again, and we're going to work on the rear wheels. Now, when you order the rear wheels, they're going to come in pieces like that. And it's going to come with a whole pack of different types of screws and a whole pack of different types of spacers, right? So we want our wheel to be 3 wide. So you find the spacers that correspond to the distance between the 3 of the little pieces, plastic pieces. And then what you're going to want to do is slide your treads, if this is the tread design that you go with, over your rear wheel assembly, right? And of course this one's going to go on this side right here. Next, you want to line up these little spacers with the corresponding ones on this side. But it's also important to note that this round circle right here, on the opposite side, there's going to be a hex. It's for the nut to screw down on, right? So go ahead and lock it down. Let me just make sure. Yep, there's a hex on that side and bolt on that side. Then you're going to take the longer screws, drop it through, flip it over, and put your nut in that hex socket like that, right? And then you want to tighten up your screw, right? Just like that. Now note that it does come with a whole bunch of extra one of these standoffs. Save these, because this is what you're going to use later for your electronic board standoffs. Now, we design all of our Scavenger kits to be built and assembled in many different ways. You might find other wheels, other Omni wheels, other drive wheels, other pieces that may work. And by all means, build it the way you want it. If you find something that you have locally in your country that they don't have, go with something else. That's why we design these kits to go together like Legos, so that way you can rebuild them. I know in the UK and Australia, my friend Andrew, this is a guy I always work with when we design these kits. He has a different type of motor, but they're exact specifications to the amp flows. So, you know, there's that. Next, what you want to do is pop these on. Here, this is the wider of the 2 spacers on the parts list. You pop these on the back right here, then pop your sprocket on there like that, and then you're going to drive your screws through there like that, right? And all these parts come with the wheel assembly. So it's like we reuse a lot of the stuff that they send us as spares, as well as when we build the chassis, when you get it water jet cut, we use the negative space of the wheel channels as the electronic boards. That's just so that way we can save material cost, and it doesn't cost as much money for you guys to put these things together. Next, what you're going to want to do, it's the same exact assembly, you know, as the other one, except instead of that washer on the other side, you have this giant spacer right here. So what you want to do is drop this through here, like so, and then you're going to put your little tiny spacer in there, and then you're going to drop your other washer, your other bearing and your spacer, like so. Like I said, you may have to sand those spacers down a little bit just so they fit, and that right there is your drive wheel assembly. All right, you're gonna have to cut your own chains. Okay, it's not that difficult. You can get a link breaker from Vex if you're nervous about trying to cut it. I just use a grinder, and I grind one of the links off and then pop it apart and then reassemble it. But if you want to, it's always good to have one of those link breakers anyway. I just don't bother with that stuff. Anyway, so now that they're done, let's go ahead and assemble those. So we have our chassis. Want to drop our wheels in right here. Make sure you put your chain around. All right, make sure you put your chain around your sprocket on your motor, and then go ahead and throw your bolt on. You don't have to tighten these up just yet. If you just finger tighten them for now, that's good enough. You can tighten them up later once you get it all in place. Same thing with this side. You want to slide it on, put your chain around your sprocket, around the motor. Right? And then go ahead and put your bolt on and just finger tighten it. Okay, so there's that. Go ahead and flip it over. And she's almost done, right? Apparently I put these motors on backwards. These need to be facing, this needs to be on this side, and this needs to be on that side because I cut the wire so short, but I'm not gonna worry about that right now. I'm gonna disassemble. Let's continue with the assembly. So this back piece right here, right? You can cut this off if you do not want to have your tow hitch, or you can order this little ball tow hitch from Amazon and pop that on there. We use these droids mainly to tow R2-D2s when they run out of battery. That's why these things are designed the way they are. They have a lot of towing power. So you can put this little tow hitch on there and use it to hook up to other droids or other MSEs and do a chain of them if you want. So I'm gonna go ahead and set this aside, and we'll talk about the electronics. All right, so you're gonna receive these electronic boards that come with the water jet kit. And remember those standoffs we talked about? Go ahead and screw those on there. Now for my electronics, I'm using just a saber tooth with a radio transmitter and receiver. A little simple connection right here. It's not a whole lot to it, right? You just hook it up to the battery, hook it up to the motors, plug the receiver into it, right? And you're good to go. You have to adjust a couple of dip switches for that radio transmit, and I'll go over that, you know, in the actual design thread. So you want to figure out where you want your electronics, screw those down, and get these all assembled correctly, and then you're good to go. We left these little like tabs here in order for you to tie down your wires that are going to your electronics. So once you get your wires all where they need to be, you can get either tie wraps, or I like to use these little Velcro things, slap them around there, wrap the wires up, and that keeps them all tied down and out of the way, right? So as far as batteries, a lot of you guys like to use lipos and those really small profile batteries. You could probably tape one to here, a little lipo battery. Might want to hook one of these in. I like to use lead acid batteries. I put this one on the rear of the droid, right behind the motors, just like so. Here, these wires are actually going out the front. I reversed these, and then that's the way I assemble mine, because I don't know, I just love these little lead acid batteries. Adds a little more weight to the droid, and yeah, it's pretty good. So everything else is straightforward. Once you get your electronics, you're going to mount them in these holes right here with screws, with your standoffs. They use number 832 screws, right? I think that's on the parts list. You know, just buy them at any hardware store or Home Depot, screw them in, and there you have it. This is the chassis. That's all there is to it. Very simple, very straightforward. Not a whole lot of anything that you need to do. That's the way it is. So yeah, I'm hoping that once we're done with the full no weld shell, that this is something that we see when we go to conventions all the time. We see all these Scavenger MSEs out there. I'm looking forward to it. I'm very excited for it. Like I said, we do this stuff for just to help out the community. We have no other intentions other than, you know, we're not trying to sell anything. We release the files for free. We tell you where to go get the parts. You assemble it and you do what you like with it, you know. Like I said, you can either go with this simple electronics like this, saber-tooth and the radio transmitter, or you can put some complex one in there like the Shadow or some other control system you can think of. Then the design does come with a hole right here. That hole is for your on-off switch, so that way you can just reach under the droid, flip the switch on, and you're good to go. You don't have to take the lid off or anything. You can have it all self-contained. I believe we're planning on designing the skirt so that way the underneath is opened up, so you can just have free access to the wheels and the switch and whatnot, so that way you don't have to remove the bottom skirt off of your droid every time you want to change out the wheels, change out your treads, or do any maintenance on it. You can access everything from here just by pulling the lid off, and everything from below just by turning it over. So there's that. That's about it for assembling the Scavenger MSE chassis. Like I said, we plan on bringing a lot more stuff to you guys in the future. Me, Andrew, and some of the other guys, we're coming up with some pretty cool things. And if you are interested in working with us, coming up with new designs, or maybe improving on some of our current designs, jump into our Discord, you know, and post your ideas in the thread, talk with us, join our Scavenger Workshop Facebook group, and hang out with us there. So till next time, peace out. Y'all have a good one.